It's showtime, folks. Welcome to the Jewelry Outlook webinars. It's so nice of you to be with us today. All of us in our day-to-day lives are very busy. We are chasing targets, we have meeting to attend, we have things to do, we have family members to attend to. As a result of which, we have very little time to do anything creative. Conventional wisdom says that thoughts precede actions, but thoughts take a backseat because of our hectic life. It is therefore very necessary for all of us to find time to engage in meaningful conversations with like minded people as well as do some deep thinking. American author Joe Sidman said it very beautifully. When you press a pause button on a computer, it stops. But when you press a stop button on human beings, they start working. You reflect on what you have learned. You rethink your imaginations. You reconnect with your widely held beliefs. And this process helps come generate a lot of alternatives. The current crisis due to the pandemic have ensured that all of us are doing precisely that: reflect, rethink, reimagine, and reconnect. All things in this world, in this universe, are connected. The visionary is one who finds out the connections and the linkages, connects the dots, and builds a business around that and becomes a successful. Millions of people today are thinking and putting those creative energies. This is not going to go waste. In times to come, once the pandemic is over, the world is going to be a different place. The ideas that will be generated are forever going to change the world. At Jewelry Outlook, it has been our objective to bring in a cross-pollination of ideas. Jewelry fraternity is totally clued on to selling products. They are spending millions of dollars on advertising, but very little money goes into investment in brand. We are so busy selling products that we have stopped telling stories. Now, selling stories and telling stories is a potent idea. And we have with us today Ashish Patil, who is an expert in this field. He's a filmmaker and he is a storyteller. So without further ado, I invite him to take over. And since he belongs to the film industry, let me welcome him by saying, lights, camera, action. Here we go. Ashish, take over.
Oh my God. Thanks so much, Anil. I mean, after an introduction like that, I myself can't wait to hear myself speak. So you put too much pressure on me. So thank you so much. I was just missing the drum roll, but you made up for it. So thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for inviting me to do this. I was really looking forward to chatting with all of you. And it's always fun to tell stories, especially in these crazy times when we're all kind of cooped up at home, doing all kinds of things, not just work from home, but there's work at home, which one realizes is taking up so much time. So between work at home and work from home, there's a webinar from home, which is the other WFH, which we are kind of wrapping our heads around. So thank you so much. I'm like Anil mentioned, for a very large chunk of my career, what I've landed up doing is essentially telling stories. So be it in the broadcast world when I was running MTV, or for that matter, producing feature films when I was at Yash Raj Films, or for that matter, the digital screen. And one has always landed up telling stories either just for entertainment or for a marketing partner to essentially help service a marketing objective. And that's what one has attempted to do. So as Anil mentioned earlier, I think stories play a very critical part in our entire, narrative in terms of scheme of things. And today, marketing is no longer really about the products or the services you sell. It's actually just about the stories that you tell. And that is so critical because if you pull back and think about, school and college when we were studying, it's the most boring lectures and those teachers which you don't remember a single lesson, but the most obscure lyrics, the most random sequences or scenes from movies, those just stay with you because they are intertwined with your memories. And if you're able to find a way to place your brand or your product at the heart of that, I think you'll be able to build such a powerful bond with your consumer, which you will then be able to monetize. So that's what one is going to talk about. And before we get started, I was really hoping to share with you a really compelling story like this, which I was fortunate enough to get a chance to tell. It's inspired by a very, very personal experience that happened. This is, when my son was growing up, he was about 5 years old, and we had these fun play dates which were happening. And we had a bunch of kids over, and they started singing a bunch of rhymes. They were singing head, shoulders, knees and toes, head, shoulder, knees and toes. And my son goes head, shoulder, knees and toes, penis, vagina. And everyone's like, whoa, what just happened? And that's when we realized that there is just so much awkwardness linked to talking about sex in front of kids. It's so taboo, especially in India. There is almost like a stigma attached to it. And it's like the thing birds and bees that you don't talk about. And that's when I decided to create this series. It's incidentally the most watched original fiction series on YouTube in India. It sits at upwards of 75 million views. It's been produced in about 15 languages. This was done for Reckitt and Benckiser for one of their condom brands. It's India's first original fiction series about sex education. And incidentally, it's a case study in the London Business School. So let me play you a short clip. More importantly, my point was over here was the fact that when we were testing this material, what we realized when we were testing it with young kids, that we were using all these analogies of email and USB cords, etc., to explain concepts of menstruation and condoms and pregnancy, etc. And we realized that the tech part required absolutely no explanation whatsoever. That's the stuff that kids got completely. And that's when it really hit me that how dramatically communication has changed since the time we've grown up. From when we were younger, it was essentially just maybe a landline telephone, a chits, maybe letters, and a one-on-one interaction. But now there are multiple tools of communication. So just when you think you figured out Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat with these strange filters where you become a dog, in comes TikTok and confuses the hell out of you. There's the fact that all communication is really instant. I mean, there's people tuning in from Italy and from the UK, and I'm continents away, and we're having this conversation so seamlessly. Anything I say, you have a question, the next instant it can be with me. And given the current lack of patience that most millennials have or most audiences have, I mean, they don't want to wait, right? That works really well. I'm not going to wait 15 days for a letter to be delivered for my query to be answered. Similarly, the fact that it's really short and attention spans have shrunk. That's the reason why 280 characters are essential. Or if you're writing a long piece article, it needs to be flagged off that, long read. Otherwise, you just see a hashtag which goes hashtag TLDR, too long, didn't read. Similarly, the fact that all tonality of communication has become very, very casual. I mean, you look at this session particularly. I have a presentation, which is a webinar happening, which is a workshop of sorts. And I have this funky colored deck, which has our prime minister in these strange colors with this strange one-liner screaming out at you. And similarly, when I'm writing into clients, it is no longer dear respected sir, signing off with yours sincerely. It's typically, hey, Anil, how you doing? And hey, cheers. In fact, if the tone is different, I actually start suspecting whether it's a bot writing to me. So tonality of communication has also become very, very casual. It's very visual now. The reason why memes, GIFs, stickers, emojis, I mean, there's a parallel language essentially going on, which is just primarily visual, which is happening, right? So if you don't put a visual to your communication, the chances of it being consumed, read, viewed is that much lower. So it's become very, very visual. And the fact that it's global. I mean, this webinar is testimony to that. This is the new normal. Or anything that even a Trump tweets about today will be consumed globally, and people will be, creating their own memes and so on and so forth out of it. But what's interesting is that, the fact that almost 500 hours of videos are uploaded every minute on YouTube, we have not really been ever taught how to communicate in this new age digital world, least of all how to tell stories. And that's just something which we are kind of winging it and trying to figure it out as we go along. So that's just something I landed up spending a certain amount of time on trying to figure out that what is different and how do you really address this. And that's when it really I also realized that the more things change, the more they remain the same. So what I'm really hoping to share with you is essentially 5 principles which have remained common to telling stories and selling stories, irrespective of it being the digital age or the rock age, irrespective of which product category you're in, whether it's an FMCG, whether it's a luxury product, whether it's a financial service or whatever. These are the 5 principles that I have used typically over my entire career to either commission content or to evaluate content. And that's just something I would park with you. Of course, by no stretch of imagination is this list comprehensive or complete. I don't even claim for it to be accurate. This is just my experience. So please take on board what you believe makes sense and feel free to completely throw out the rest of it. But if 2 out of these 5 boxes you're able to tick mark, chances are you're on the right track. So that's what I'd park with you. Starting with the first principle, which is at the heart of all content and communication. This is a fundamental principle no matter what you're doing. It's this new audience which is singularly obsessed with becoming the best Instagram version of itself, and if you have a product or a service which you're trying to market to them, unless you're able to help them improve, deliver a benefit. Now, this sounds like a very fundamental marketing insight, put the consumer need, want, desire at the heart of a communication. But unfortunately, a lot of people just miss that. So if you're not able to design something which can, help someone get smarter, get richer, get more pretty, get cooler, get into a relationship, get a date, then somewhere you are missing a trick. That's a fundamental thing which you need to ask yourself right at the start, also in terms of, hey, what is the objective? What is the benefit that I'm pushing out? And is my communication now being able to communicate that or deliver on that particular ask? I'll share a short example of something I landed up doing a few years back. And this was for a very traditional, conservative brand. And I'm going to pick a slightly more expensive category, namely the automobile category, because it's an expensive purchase. It's not a casual, go pick up a t-shirt, go drink a cola kind of a decision. This is a very expensive choice that people make. It's a very considered decision which you evaluate. So this was something we landed up doing for the leading automobile manufacturer in India, which is called Maruti. It's a government undertaking in collaboration with Suzuki. And they were launching a new model called, which was a compact SUV called the Ertiga. And Maruti's challenge was the fact that it was seen as a very traditional fuddy-duddy brand. It was the brand that my dad would buy. The younger audience today was opting for the smaller, cooler hatchback. So they would go for a Hyundai or they would go for a Honda, but they will not opt for a Maruti because it was just not cool enough for them. So that really was their task, that how can you help me find a way to make this cooler? And we decided to do that in the most outrageous manner, where the brand really became the story. We designed an entire feature film. This is a film that came out and completely exploded at the box office. And it was so smartly designed that no one even knew that this was funded by Maruti. Because it didn't smell like a 2-hour TV commercial. Let me show you a short clip of the trailer. Was really, really fun to do, and interestingly delivered really well at a business objective level. So, the barometer in the automobile industry is test drives. So when we pushed out this campaign, this particular movie, test drives for Maruti went up by 30%, and just became a case study of sorts, because no one had done a branded feature film. And especially for a very conservative company like Maruti, where decision making is very numbers driven. It's very like, what are the GRPs? What is the reach? What are we going to do with this? So that became very, very compelling. And the fact that we were able to integrate it so seamlessly worked really well, and just completely delivered on the benefit of making Maruti cool. Because here was a really entertaining film. The story of a young, cool college guy trying to impress the college hottie. So he sneaks out his father's car and then loses the car. What happens next? And then delivered with a lot of entertainment, song and dance in full Bollywood style, extremely popular. In fact, even now, the film is on high rotation across every movie channel. So it's running on satellite, it's on streaming platforms. You probably catch it on an airline on a flight. So that worked really well for them. So yeah, that's really the first principle of make sure the consumer and how do you help them is at the heart of all content and communication that you make or every story that you tell. Which brings me to my next principle, which is about how this consumer is focused on, forget what Modi Sarkar says, it's up ki bar, fun bar, which is this constant need for entertainment or the need for constant entertainment. I would actually not even call them consumers, I would call them consumers. Here is the audience which is, singularly obsessed with having a great time. And today, going to a mall or going to any of these places is no longer a functional trip to just go buy a shirt. You're expecting to be entertained. I'm expecting to be intercepted by a promoter from Red Bull who will make me sample a drink. I'm expecting to see some performance happening in the atrium in the mall. I'm expecting to sample some product over there or someone trying out something on ground or someone having fun. I'm looking at that, and that's also fundamentally changing even the way we deliver education now. That's reality, And if you're not able to really do that, then you're really missing a trick. It's that classic example that I use, right? About what are the reason why we don't remember some of those terrible, boring lessons from school is because exactly that they were just boring. While the most obscure lyrics, the most strange scenes from movies or dialogues will come back to you because they've emotionally got intertwined with what we were doing. So if you're able to entertain your audience is when, and this doesn't matter, even if it's a very serious category, be it life insurance. If you're unable to engage and entertain your audience, I mean, if you make them snore, they are not going to enter your store. So that's a really fundamental insight. And we picked this up and applied it in a really boring category in an interesting case study that we worked on. This is a category which is buried under the tropes of cliches, which is the packaged foods category. Soups and noodles. So essentially in India, this is the market leader is someone called Nestle. They have a brand called Maggi, which is hugely popular. And the narrative since the last 3 decades has been, Mom, I'm hungry. No problem, kid. 2 minutes, I'll make you noodles quickly. Instant noodles, boom, here you go. And that narrative has been kind of done to death. And here was a challenger brand, which was a local player called Chings, which came on board, and they needed to do something to really short circuit, get into public memory, or create that awareness that, hey, by the way, I exist. I have something more exciting. Check us out. So we did the completely unthinkable. We buried the mother from the entire content and communication, and we actually short circuited the advertising and created a mini movie. It was a 5-minute long feature film, and most people didn't even realize it's a feature. It's an ad because it was produced in a way where we cast the biggest Bollywood actor for young people right now, Ranveer Singh. We also brought in one of the biggest blockbuster directors called Rohit Shetty to direct the ad, and I happened to write this and put the communication at the heart of. So Ranveer Singh became Ranveer Ching, which is the name of the brand. So it's a 5-minute film, so I won't play the whole thing, but I'll play you guys a short clip so you get a sense of the scale. And when you see it, you'll realize, like, am I watching Mad Max or am I watching an ad for a soup or noodle? Okay, here you go.
डर है बंदूक का, बरसाया है भूख का। ये हमारा कल है और इस दुनिया का आज है। क्या जमीन में मुश्किल से उगता अनाज है।
I'm just gonna skip a bit.
जाके बोल दो अपने बॉस को कि भटिंडा हो या बेचिंग, एक ही किंग, रणवीर सिंह। मेहरबान साहिबान, कदरदान, नवाजान, भाईजान और पहलवान।
विदेशी बोल के चाइनीज
It had song and dance. It had, I mean, all of serious action, a great product window.
जवाब भी दूंगा और जवाब में तेरा मुंह तोड़ दूंगा। तू मुझे जानता नहीं है, मैं चू चू। हाँ तो मैंने कब कहा कि तू चू नहीं है? तू तो बहुत बड़ा चू है, तू सबसे बड़ा चू है, इंटरनेशनल चू है। तेरे तो पैर चूने चाहिए, तेरे नाम का मतलब। देसी चाइनीज, अपना चाइनीज, क्योंकि चिंग is king.
I love desi Chinese. That's it.
So, yeah, and you guys should check out the full ad. It's full on bells and whistles, done in full Bollywood style. And in terms of what it did for the brand is that it completely exploded. This is a very retail, trade-driven category. It's a 30 rupee or 5 rupee pouch for soups and a smaller pouch for noodles. So push-driven completely, and this exploded. So distribution for them went up from 70,000 stores to 280,000 stores, literally in like 6 months. Their top line exploded from like about 150 crores ballpark to about 500 crores. This is called Capital Foods. That just completely exploded. And this became the most watched ad across Asia Pacific in that year. There was competition tweeting about this ad saying, what the hell, the brand ambassador of Maggie, Mr. Bachchan, was tweeting saying, what the hell just happened here? What was this? There were movie critics reviewing an advertisement for a brand. The Komal Nahatas, Taran Adarsh, Anupama Chopras of the world. And at a business level, it suddenly brought a local player and up there in competition with a national player. And so in that sense, it's completely delivered on its objective. So it was some pretty outrageous, ballsy entertainment that the client pushed out. And this was a great case study of really showing the power of entertainment, no matter how boring your category can be. Yeah. Which brings me then to my third principle, which is the need for speed. Yes, this is, and there's someone asking about, is there anything jewelry led? And this is exactly the example that I'm going to come to right now. In fact, the next two are linking into the jewelry category. That this is a very, very impatient generation. And here's an interesting statistic. The fact that, the attention span of a goldfish is about 9 seconds, but the attention span of a human being is only about 7 seconds. And that's the reason why, if you see a James Bond film, it's designed in a way where it opens with a climax. So we also try to design a lot of our content that way, that it opens with this massive bang that brings you in, just like every Mission Impossible movie. And then I seep you in and then I keep you in, So that's really important that you keep that in mind, given low attention spans. And this is impacting everything from the duration of our content and communication, the period of our campaigns, how long they run. Because people tend to get bored really fast. There's a reason why shelf life of a movie or songs, etc. The reason why people keep changing their display pictures, the reason they keep changing their ringtones, that kind of reflects that particular reality. I mean, young people today check their phone 157 times a day. So when we were talking to DPA, which is the Diamond Producers Association, and they wanted to do something to talk to this younger contemporary audience, beyond the very, done to death bridal wear, emotional setting, father, daughter, long play, slow commercial with beauty shots of a pretty girl. They wanted to do something very compelling, which will create conversation about contemporary love stories and place diamonds beyond what my mom likes to wear and what I will inherit from Dadi and my grandmom to something that a young person can go and pick out. So we landed up creating a set of 4 love stories. It's an anthology of 4 love shorts, and which were done literally in 5 minutes each, which had a really stellar cast and delivered the whole messaging of contemporary relationships styled with contemporary jewelry made of diamonds really well. Now, this is a set of 4 films that went live on Hotstar sometime early this year. I'm going to show you a clip of a trailer, then maybe show you a short clip. So the way the trailer works is gets you interested in the content, saying, hey, dude, this looks like a great movie to check out. And then the stories will deliver the hardcore messaging of the beauty of the jewelry and so on and so forth. So here is Pyar Actually. Take a quick look.
नहीं
How do I look? Girls are so cute.
sorry bro agree यार
Idiot. My husband, I tell you, is such a sexist. Sexy नहीं, sexist.
घुटने जवाब दे गए हैं तुम्हारे खड़ा नहीं हुआ जाता स्टैंड अप करने चलियो
I should crack all my sex jokes today. मैं कुछ करना चाहती हूँ. Life.
दिस इज समथिंग जो तुम्हारी मम्मा और मैं दोनों चाहते हैं
क्या मैं दोगे नहीं ले सकते इंस्टेंट?
बैंकॉक 3 डे अबे नहीं चाहिए यार
योलो यार.
मैंने एक बार कहा नहीं तो नहीं
तुम्हें देखा था कभी? तुम लड़कों के लिए बहुत इजी होता है प्रपोज करना.
किसी भी लंबी कमिटमेंट से प्रॉब्लम
झुंझुन वाला फैमिली का घंटी बज जाएगी. You are a bit of an exception. And so what if it lasts only for 42 seconds? ताली बजाओ you 2 rupee speaker.
So yeah, this was Pyar. Actually, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you literally the first 15 seconds of the content. So you'll see how, I mean, the showcase is mind-blowing. We picked 4 stories which showcase 4 demographics, from an older couple to a younger couple. We've showcased an entire range of jewelry, which was from a bunch of partners, from Tanishq to, I mean, a bunch of people, from necklaces, bracelets, earrings, etc. And there was time spent in terms of, you know, beauty shots and different settings of how the jewelry was showcased in, you know, modern settings to a wedding and more. Yeah. So here is a clip from the first film. I'm just going to play literally the first 15, 20 seconds.
बता रही हूँ. Pandit ji na will have a hard on throughout the pheras.
So yeah, so that was essentially a Pyar Actually. So do check it out. It's live on Hotstar, Disney Plus Hotstar, and it's quite fun. On to our next principle, which is this need for constant connection. You know, that's a really interesting insight, that how, especially today in the times of social distancing, most people are really worried about emotional distancing. That even if we're physically apart, we need to feel like we're part of a community. There's a reason why Facebook, etc., do so well, and these WhatsApp groups, etc., even if some of them may be very, very painful, with strange uncles and family members sending you random good morning messages. We've all experienced that. But that has become a really interesting insight. So if you're able to really find a way to bring people into a community together, and also flip that around and try not to be everything to everyone, you know. So today, I think trying to be everything to everyone, which is like your 1 billion plus Facebook, YouTube, Google, Amazon, those are going to be very, very difficult. It's not going to be possible to do that. So if you can instead try to be something to everyone, that's possible. Or everything to someone, where you carve out a demographic, that kind of stuff, just addressing, you know, single women, just addressing kids, just addressing senior citizens, that kind of thing, or just being the Uber for everyone, or just being the, you know, the laundry guy for everyone. That kind of slicing and dicing, that's the insight that we kind of took on board. And you look at, I mean, even the whole comic book universe, right? What used to be a very nerdy, geeky space, what Marvel and DC have done is they've made it so mainstream with Avengers, etc. I mean, they're the largest blockbusters of all time, right? Between all the superhero movies. So we took that insight on board and created this show, which was essentially very singularly focused on single women. and young single women, and very today, very contemporary. And this is something we landed up doing for Tanishq, and not for Tanishq, but for Mia, which is their more contemporary jewelry for younger people, typically for the working woman, is who they target. And they had typically still been doing advertising, which was fairly traditional. And when they looked at this material, they realized it's very edgy, especially for a very conservative brand like the Tatas. This was very edgy and out there, but they realized that this is potentially something which has potential to become a cult. So that's when they came on board, and we created this series about, which is the story of two young girls who are stuck in a bathroom. So the entire narrative was delivered in 6 episodes, shot in a bathroom. And it was always really a lot of curiosity for a lot of people that why do women go to the bathroom in groups? And this kind of tried to boldly take you where no man has gone before. And what looked like a really frivolous show, it actually addressed some very hardcore stuff about, pregnancy and abortion and, being single in a big city and careers and so on and so forth, but did that in a really fun manner. So I'm going to play you a short clip. Please pardon the language on this one. It's pretty risque, but I think you'll enjoy the material. It was designed for the web, so it was pretty out there.
Oh, your pimples are as large as my nipples, man. Like your nipples, they're surrounded with hair. यार पीरियड्स हो ही नहीं रहे तो बेडशीट बॉक्स कितने बड़े हो गए काट के फेंक दो क्या Is that weird that turned me on just a little bit? I'm gonna fix this. ठीक है जॉइन कितना लगना का Why would you do that? तो मुश्किल से पोटी से पोटी यार इसको उखाड़ कर इसकी नीचे से जा सकते हैं ना Yes sir, oh sir, yes sir.
Radhika, मेरी कॉपी कहाँ है?
Sir, you're in Japan, but I'm in Bombay in the office.
Excuses always.
I want to live, okay? I want to have sex and I want to have children. Consensually. In your face, young people. Fuck this net connection यहाँ पे जो कि 3G कॉल था जिस पड़े की मिलता ही नहीं है. I have a problem with homosexuality. You have a problem with grasping reality. You just hit me. You were just being a total. मैं सपने देखे थे इतना कुछ सोचा था maybe it won't be all that bad यार could have owned that बचना ऐ हसीनो तो मैं आ गया हुस्न का आशिक हुस्न का
Well, yeah, so that was Ladies' Room, which brings me really to my last principle, which is the fact that this is probably the most woke generation ever. It's probably the most conscientious. They're like the conscience keepers of humanity. There's a reason why a Greta Thunberg is the Time Person of the Year. These are people who keep us honest. They keep us rooted. And young people today are no longer limited to Facebook activism. It is not just something that they will tweet about. If there is something that bothers them, be it climate change, be it the Citizens Amendment Act or anything else, the tweet will move to the street. And that is fundamentally influencing a lot of buying, a lot of purchase decisions as well. It is influencing the companies they invest in, the organizations they work for, and most definitely the brands that they purchase. Now, given the choice between two brands where one brand also has a greater purpose beyond giving me shiny, luxurious hair or making me look beautiful, if they're also associated with a larger theme or a cause, that makes a massive positive inclination for the consumer to influence them finally when it comes to taking that decision to purchase. So recently, Sanjeev Mehta, who's the chairman of Unilever, was quoted as talking about, they have about 67 brands between detergents and soaps and deos and, food products, etc. That if a brand within the Unilever scheme of things does not have a purpose, they will kill the brand. And which is what is a fundamental insight that all brands need to take on board. It's not just about having a CSR arm, but literally having the brand stand for something more positive, which is essential. So, and speaking of Unilever, this is something we landed up doing for them a couple of years back. For one of their legacy brands, which is a 102-year-old tea brand called Brooke Bond Red Label. And that talks to completely tier 2, tier 3 small town, because of the nature of the brand. And their entire positioning is about breaking social barriers, one cup of tea at a time. So we created this particular property, which was about breaking social barriers, one song at a time. And we picked up on a theme which was very, very topical at that time and very relevant, which was India's first transgender band. It was called the Six Pack Band, which was a band of 6 hijras or transgenders, chakkas as they're referred to in India, not so politely, and used entertainment, because we realized if you were to really give someone a lecture or create a documentary, no one's interested. So we delivered that messaging through song and dance and put the brand at the heart of it. So for example, a simple song which was called the Chai Song spoke about how tea leaves do not differentiate between where the milk came from, whose spoon it is. It tastes the same for everyone. And we wish the world could be as inclusive as a cup of tea. So come, let's have a cup of tea together. And we brought in a bunch of really big, interesting celebrities, from Hrithik Roshan to Shah Rukh Khan to Sonu Nigam, incidentally, who has a personal assistant who's a transgender person, differently oriented, to do this. This is a clip from one of the music videos. Here you go. So that was Six Pack Band. So in summary, really, what I would park with you is, this is a particular slide that I would recommend literally take a screenshot, put it up on your softboard and keep it as a checklist, irrespective of whether you are creating or curating content or you're evaluating content or communication that someone else has made for you. Principle 1, how does it benefit the consumer? How are you able to put him at the heart of it? 2, is it fun? Is it entertaining? Is it engaging? Is it compelling? 3, can it deliver messaging or deliver whatever it is that you need to do now? It's influencing even the way we design our consumer promotions. I'm no longer going to wait for that big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Even if I send in an entry for a contest, I want at least a ringtone or a t-shirt or some merchandise free. So design consumer promotions, design them to be delivered ASAP, fast, right now, instant gratification. 4, find a way to build community or target a particular community, help them connect or stay connected or talk to connected groups of people. In the jewelry business, I often find people trying to be everything to everyone. I rarely see slicing and dicing happen within categories and subcategories. At the most, it's bridal and non-bridal jewelry, or married, unmarried, that kind of thing. I think there is an opportunity when you drill down beyond products of just bracelets, earrings, etc. So definitely think about that and see how you can attack that then through content and communication. The answer will come through product creation as well. And 5, most critical, finding purpose. I mean, the last example that I shared, which is the Six Pack Band, is very, very special because it picked up a bunch of awards. It picked up India's first Cannes Grand Prix Glass Lion, which Sheryl Sandberg gives away. It helped Brooke Bond Red Label outsell the packaged tea category by 1.3 times, which is huge. But beyond the business impact, the awards, the recognition, it clocked about $150 million worth of PR globally. It had Ellen Page, who plays Juno, come and interview us in India. She visited a slum to interview one of the band members. But outside of all that, the most powerful thing that happened was once we launched this, a really interesting thing had happened. So one of the band members is a girl called Komal. And Komal told me that she received a call after 11 years from someone who had not spoken to her, saying, listen, come on over for a meal. And I asked her who this was, and she told me that that was her father. That when Komal, who used to be Kamlesh 11 years earlier as a young teenager, decided to come out of the closet and shared with her father that I'm differently sexually oriented, my preference, my orientation, my identity is different. The father basically told him at that stage that I have two sons. Today, I will just assume that one of them died. I want you to leave the house. And she was ostracized by the community, thrown out. And when after this campaign broke, she was just, that circle was complete. And, you know, that's when you realize no award, no business result can ever match up the impact of doing something like that. That's when you realize that content, communication, stories can not just create business impact, but they can create meaning. And when you're able to do that with your brand's content and communication, that's when you will build the kind of loyalty which is so essential, especially in these troubled times, which will matter. That's when you will build this strong emotional bond with your consumer, which will last you forever and help you build your business. And like I said at the beginning, being profitable gives you the luxury to be both creative and charitable. And that's what the fifth principle really brings me to in terms of full circle. So that's really my 5 principles of storytelling in short. And as Mr. Modi would say, bajao tali. Thank you so much.
So now you can stop sharing the screen, please.
Yes.
Yes. Fantastic presentation. Really loved it. So colorful and so interesting. So now the way forward is, I'm sure there are so many questions that you will need to answer. And we have time with us. But in case we run out of time, I assure all attendees that their questions will be addressed. Just visit the Jewelry Outlook website after 3 days and you will have your answers posted on the site. Now coming to your principles, you said me. So it reminds me of a book which I read, and it is about the human brain. The human brain is a complex organ, you know, and it is really made of 3 parts: the old brain or the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and the neocortex, which is the new brain. So in that book, it has been mentioned that the reptilian brain is very impulsive. It makes decisions very quickly, flight or fight. That is the response typically associated with the reptilian brain. The reptilian brain is also very selfish. It is always on the survival or a fighting mode. So it will ask, what is in it for me? So you have rightly addressed the me part. What I wanted to know from you, that marketing as a discipline has now evolved from economics to psychology. You know,
right.
Earlier when it started, it was all about economics, demand, supply, distribution. But it has now moved on to the psychological aspects. So
Sure.
when you make films or when you make branded communication, do you
Sure.
take these 3 principles into consideration? I mean the
Sure.
primal brain, the mammalian brain,
Sure.
and the new brain.
Sure.
Because as I understand, the reptilian brain grabs your attention. If it rejects you, you can't go further. But
Sure.
after you are filtered and approved or shortlisted, your idea is shortlisted by the mammalian brain, the reptilian brain, it still goes to the mammalian brain, which is about the emotions, and then to the rational part. So please, I would like to know your thoughts on this.
Sure. Thanks, Anil. I think you took me back straight to biology class with that reptilian brain example, and my scars are still fresh from there. But I think very valid in terms of the way you kind of place that. Now, we don't necessarily approach it scientifically like that in terms of which brain to attack. But yes, there is psychology attached, very, very strong psychological insight attached to every story that you create. And I'll give you a simple parallel that, you know, storytelling essentially is the most potent trick to trick your brain into feeling emotions that otherwise were impossible to evoke in a straightforward manner. Like, they can make or break your persuasion efforts. basically what you've got to do when you're designing stories or communication is one of two things, if not both. One, like you said, the reptilian brain, I need to find a way to get you engaged. So when I do that, I get you engaged, it releases a neurochemical called cortisol by the brain. Now that is a chemical that induces distress, which makes you pay more attention. So when I spoke about the James Bond opening, which is like a climax, you're like, oh, I'm on the edge of my seat. Like, what? What just happened? I'm in. Now I've got you. Now I have to keep you there. And two, I have to find a way to get you to care, which is releasing a neurochemical called oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is something that stimulates feelings of sympathy and care. That is what makes people take actions that the story is trying to move them towards. Now, nothing is foolproof, but there's a lot of scientific data and empirical evidence of storytelling where people have tested these things. Just a straightforward message where someone said, here's my product, here's what it costs, here are its features, buy it. Versus weaved into a narrative of, here is a father and a son, here's what happened to them, father was unwell, son did this, abhi iska ye benefit hua, this product came to the rescue. I will definitely remember that second story better. And there are a bunch of experiments done like this. There is something called the Future of Storytelling, which is a website which does a lot of these. So check that out. But that's the psychology that I would probably look at, that one of these two things, triggering cortisol, triggering oxytocin. Of course, we're not thinking about chemicals when we're writing stories. But at a fundamental level, am I able to engage you? Am I able to get you to care? That's how we design it. Yeah.
Very valid point. Since you mentioned oxytocin, I'll give you just an example. An incident happened just today. In the present circumstances, when we need to reach out and help the poor people, all of us are making donations to best of our capability. But it so happened that I got a beautifully worded message which evoked a lot of positive sentiments in me. And I made a donation even though I had donated the same day. So you are rightly said that oxytocin evokes sympathy, empathy, you become more generous, and marketers need to take all these things into consideration in telling a story. Because there are good stories and there are bad stories. Now you also mentioned cortisol and adrenaline, because the hate speeches, which are all about inciting people and taking them on their wrong path. So since this is not a psychological class, I will just move on to the next point. You showed a beautiful film to us about the Ching noodles. Now, every story has a structure. It has got first of all, the context, what is happening, where, when. Then we have characters, the hero, the heroine, the villain. Then there needs to be a conflict, and there needs to be end. In the end, whether the hero dies or the villain dies, or who gets the girl. All these things are there, and it has been documented in a lot of marketing books. But then the marketing budgets are not that great. We have limited budgets, and attention span of the consumers is also limited. So do these principles have to be applied in every piece of branded communication? In Ching, you have been able to do it because you still had 5 minutes. But what about 30 seconds? What about 60 seconds? Please guide us.
Absolutely valid question, Anil. And I don't think it's a function of the duration. So, I mean, with Ching, you'll say, 5 minutes. Now with Mere Dad Ki Maruti, I had 2 hours, not just 5 minutes, right? So it's never really a function of, I think the story will decide the duration in a sense. And fortunately, digital today has freed us up from the formats of it needs to be 30 seconds, it needs to be 24 minutes for TV. There's a lot of looseness available to structure it basis the requirement of the brand. And there are enough examples, like the six-pack band example that I shared is not 5 minutes. There are the clip that I played you was 30 seconds. I have examples of things that we have done. Even a Mere Dad Ki Maruti was, if you look at a movie, the movie business is the best example of using content to market content. Every piece of marketing they push out is content, right? Right from the poster, which is not even any duration driven, to the trailer, to the song, to the dialogue promo, to the interview in Bombay Times, or for that matter, walk on to a reality show like Indian Idol or Kapil Sharma Comedy Nights to promote their movie. It's all content, and that varies across in terms of duration. So it doesn't matter, depending on how sharply you need to deliver your message. At times, it's just one visual that is sufficient to get you to act. Literally, that could be 5 seconds. And there's a reason why TikTok, with its cap of what, 10 seconds, has exploded, right? It's sitting at like 500 million, a billion odd downloads across the world. It's inexplicable, right? So I don't think it's necessarily a function of the duration. The brief, the objective is what can be taken on board, of course, with the budgets, which brings me to the second part of your question, that Kings is an expensive film. That's almost like $1 million, but every brand may not have, that kind of budget. And you may be a small jewelry store sitting somewhere in Nagpur or a smaller town, and I don't have this kind of money to spend. So how do you do? And I've always believed that, the scale of an idea is not decided or defined by its budget. It's a function of the power of the idea. So which is why I also shared something I did for Tanishq's Mia, which is Ladies Room, which is very, very cost efficient. The entire series, the entire cast is 2 people. It's 2 girls. And the entire thing is shot in 1 room. It's 1 bathroom. So it's so efficiently produced. So you don't need to spend $1 million. You could be doing this very, very seamlessly. And you can design that basis the budget and your objectives and the task.
Now, another point based on your presentation.
Yes.
We always find, and all of us agree, that all of us have a very short attention span, especially the millennials. And people don't want to marketers to sell it to them. They want to buy. So they have really low attention span when they see a commercial. But on the other hand, look at this web series. People indulge into binge watching, which goes on for hours together, minimum 8 to 9 hours. So there also what you said makes a lot of difference and a lot of sense actually, that people want fun here and now. They are not willing to wait for tomorrow. So even if I have to wait, even if I don't get sleep throughout the night, I am going to watch that particular series and go to sleep.
Yes.
So that is something. There is a lesson for all of us in the jewelry industry, that we should be telling engaging stories. If you tell boring stories, consumers will not support. So that is my observation. And the last point, which I come to the last point, is as jewelry professionals, product design is our biggest strength.
Product,
So,
sorry, what?
Product design.
Design, yes.
Product design, craftsmanship is our biggest strength for most jewelers. So how do we use design as an element for storytelling? Do you have an answer for this?
Kind of. At some level, though, Anil, the jewelry design is actually just a product, right? That's not the story. Ideally, a story should come from a consumer insight, from a consumer need, a consumer want, a consumer benefit, the people who you want to take your design to. If there's an element we can find like that, for instance, I'll just use an example. If the designs are inspired by real life, like a locket or a pendant design based on a sketch of your firstborn, or a bracelet design linked to a gift that you got from your first boyfriend, earrings linked to some family history, or I'll use a similar design kind of example. Let's talk about a retail store. How to make a physical retail store a tool for great storytelling, right? Now, there are stories that are all around us. You just have to listen in. I'm sure if you talk to a salesman or the owner of that showroom or even a few customers, you will find them. So for instance, I could make a very, very compelling anthology to do something like, say, 1 hour at Laura Lee or 1 hour at Tribhuvan Das Bhimji Zaveri, where we follow the narrative of 3 to 4 different sets of customers who come into shop. For example, a family shopping for their daughter's wedding. A husband is there to buy something to make it up to his wife because he forgot her birthday. Or a really young kid who has no money, but he's come to buy something because he has a crush on his teacher. Or a poor lady who's come to sell some bangles because she needs money. Or a gang of robbers who've come to steal over here. And that becomes a thriller. Now, here are like 5 examples that I've used, not necessarily with design, but a physical store. So, depending on what the brief and the goal is, one can weave that in, and I would weave that design into that story accordingly. I've given you a kind of long-winded answer, but I'm hoping I've been able to address it somewhat.
So you also addressed one really interesting principle, that is consumers want to have fun, and they also need to be connected together. Now, social media are the perfect vehicles for having fun, staying connected.
Yes.
So most of the jewelers, they find that this medium is, though it is interesting, they are not able to hold on to the interest levels of the consumer. Now, I have also read that why social media are addictive is for the simple reason that when people engage in social media on Insta or maybe Facebook, the
Yes.
dopamine levels in their blood goes up. Now, dopamine levels also increase temporarily when one consumes alcohol or maybe caffeine or tobacco. And there is also a healthy way of increasing dopamine level because it's a good hormone. You know, it's a
Yes.
it makes you feel nice. It is motivational. It helps you focus. But marketers, you people, the ad agency people, they are really have been successful in holding on to the attention and making the people addictive. Whereas people who have not been able to do so are wanting to do it on a continuous basis. So what is your
Right.
answer?
I'm not sure I understood the question right, Anil. So, is
So
the question
okay,
about?
in short, I have given you a little bit. I have given the attendees a little bit of gyan, but
Right.
I just need in one sentence an answer how to
Right.
make your social media campaign really tell stories and sell stories. Today, what we find that it is that strategy has not really worked for most of the brands in
Sure.
jewelry
Sure.
space.
I think, Anil, the reason for that again is because people have landed up using their social media platforms or pages as bulletin boards. So, which is why it'll be just, hey, here's my new product, check this out. Okay, here is my new collection. It's, unless I'm really plugged in, I mean, I will go check out a celebrity, like a Kim Kardashian, what she's wearing versus necessarily, unless I'm really interested. I think the reason that happens is you've not been able to be relevant and being part of a relevant conversation in a relevant way. And at times, you people try to newsjack and try to be topical for the heck of it, and that falls flat because this is a consumer whose bullshit meter is very, very high. They can smell, rubbish being thrown at them from a mile away. So if you're generally trying to catch the wave and talk about sanitizing hands while you have nothing to do with that, and you're just generally being relevant or facetious, they will see through that. So I think it's really brings you back to finding that correct brand purpose and pivoting from there and creating conversation that matters. That's when your social pages will be relevant and you'll be able to have those conversations and have people come to check you out or tune in. I mean, why do I go to Facebook? I want to connect to my friends. Why will I come to your Facebook page? I don't know. I need to build that doska equation with you that I am the friend who gives me technical gyan. This is the friend who gives me fashion gyan. This is the friend who gives me a perspective on education and career. If you're not able to find that, that's when you will not be, and you use it as a bulletin board, you will find people just, dissing it and or not, or just not interested. I think that's what happens really. And I think that's also really the opportunity with social media, right? Because feedback is real time. You no longer have to wait to hear a campaign dalo or फिर God knows did it work, didn't work, etc. You will get feedback real time. At the end of this session, we already know there are people talking about maybe this was relevant, not relevant, etc. And you can also use that very smartly, sharpen your target. You can really, from geo targeting, from I want audiences only in this market, to psychographic targeting, that maybe the people who read Jewelry Outlook are not the same readers of Griha Shobha or Stardust, or the people who watch Netflix is the other people I want to talk to, not the people who watch ZTV. So that kind of sharpening is what you can do, and then accordingly your content need to reflect that. And if you're able to then also again follow the same principles in your social media handling of putting the benefit out there, making it fun, delivering some purpose, etc., helping people feel connected, delivering it now, and then you can build in even your call to action. And whatever that call to action is, it could be download the app, it could be subscribe to my page, it could be go buy, it could be come visit my store, or it could be the good old fashioned American couponing system. Here is a promo code, here is an offer, you do this, you will get delivery, whatever labor charges will be waived, or whatever else you do, right? Or a warranty or a guarantee or first early showcase of a new collection. That really is, I think, what one needs to do. Obviously, this is a much more long-winded answer that is essential. I can't necessarily answer that in one line, but this is the best I can share at this stage.
So I'll attempt to summarize what you have said.
Sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
What I understand from your answer, a little longer one, I may say. So, right now, whatever is being posted by jewelers on their Facebook pages is like distributing pamphlets, whether a person is interested in buying or not. Rather than do that, what you are trying to say is engage consumers in storytelling, because a consumer does not buy jewelry on a daily basis, but you have to consider the lifetime value of a consumer, get him engaged, keep him entertainment, and when the time comes, when there is a need, because it is an occasion-based purchase, it is a discretionary purchase. So
Yes.
if a consumer is in a relationship with you, if he resonates with your story, you will get a first choice. And it will depend on what you have to offer him. Am I right?
Yes.
Great. So now let's take a few questions. We have 10 to 12 more minutes. So
Okay.
we'll take some questions. Then in the end, I will just make a short statement, and whatever questions are remaining, we'll address on the Jewelry Outlook website. Please, I
Okay.
leave it to you. You can choose the question. There are 15
Okay.
of them.
Oh wow. Okay. Let me just see if I can find those. Just trying to pick out which ones.
You can club 2, 3 together and address them.
Sure. I think there's a lot of comments. I'm not able to really get to a question. I'm just trying to pick out. I'd like to know more about storytelling being relevant to content, which is also content strategy. There's Gitanjali who has asked, since you deal with various brands, how do you get your inspirations for weaving varied stories for them? I think, like I mentioned earlier, Gitanjali, I think, stories are all around us, frankly. The inspiration is typically real life. Be it Pappu and Papa as an example that I use, which was personal experience, or be it the six-pack band. I mean, typically you see transgenders at every traffic light. Your typical reaction is you roll up the window. And that really, I realized that it's so topical in terms of all that was happening. There was Laverne Cox on Orange is the New Black on the cover of Time magazine as one of the most influential people in the world. There was Obama getting onto the cover of Gay magazine for the first time. That was the entire conversation which was happening on Section 377 that time. And there was Transparent, which is the Amazon series, which is quite amazing, which picked up a bunch of these Emmys, etc. So it was very, very topical, and it was inspired partially by real life experiences and then partially by stuff which was happening in pop culture. And then we kind of delivered that. So that would be my answer to you, Gitanjali. And Martha's asking, is this webinar not about jewelry? Well, the webinar is actually about storytelling. Those principles apply across categories, be it jewelry, be it life insurance, be it a car, be it a cola, or be it fashion. But there are a few examples which will be specific to jewelry, which is what I'll end up sharing.
So
Yeah.
I just want to add to Martha what she has asked. Agreed. This is not about only about jewelry, but a consumer doesn't consider jewelry buying it in isolation. He has his own priority of needs, and how well the jewelry falls into the narrative, that depends on whether the jewelry is bought or not. So the purpose of this session is to cross-pollinate and learn from other product categories. And once we know the principles, we can definitely apply them to the jewelry. And that is the object.
Yes. Now, Shrikant has asked me about, please inform us how one shop in a taluka can adopt this method. I think I landed up using an example, Shrikant, of, maybe a set of stories set in one jewelry store, right? Like I gave you examples of 5 stories about maybe 5 customers, 5 different types of customers, even if those were shared in a very interesting manner, and they need not be video. So that is the highest form of consumption. It could be a print, it could be a written out story which appears digitally or appears in the local newspaper about 5 people, customers who came and shopped for different compelling reasons. The husband who forgot his wife's birthday, the father who's buying something for the daughter who's getting married, or whatever else. You know, so that's one example, Shrikant, for you. Coming to Laksh, his question is it necessary to design a jewel with a story, or let the film and storyteller translate and make the mediocre design look great? Well, Laksh, you know, I think that's a very simple principle. At the heart, fundamentally, your product will need to be good. Yeah, I mean, nothing like good marketing to kill a bad product. If your product sucks, no amount of great advertising will help sell it. अगर तुम्हारा product ही टट्टी है तो भाई उसका कुछ नहीं हो सकता. So you will first need to really just get that right.
Let me add to what Lakshya said. Today, we know that the 2 C's of marketing are the content and connectivity. So let's say if you have a mediocre product, hire a brand ambassador and make him wear that particular jewelry. In the short run, it will sell much more than what it is worth. But if you do it the second time, your money will be wasted. Am I right, Ashish?
Yes, absolutely. No, you're absolutely right, Anil. You know, that I think people's perception on using content marketing is that people believe that it's going to be a shortcut, that you will make this great content, hopefully, which will be great, which everyone's going to watch, and then they're going to go and run and buy my product. It won't work like that. The way it will work, I think this is something that Jayant mentioned yesterday during our tech check, that the best thing you can hope for your content to do is to get people positively inclined. You will build trust, you will build a relationship. Over a period of time, that person will be more positively inclined towards you. When it comes to making a choice, you will be hopefully up there as top of mind in their consideration set to pick your brand versus a competitor or anything else. I think that's when your product will get purchased. It's a long-winded route, but it's a stronger, more powerful route. Yeah. On to Abhishek's question. He's mentioned it gets risky in the jewelry industry to go above and beyond in terms of creativity of brand communication. Can you shed some light on that? I don't necessarily agree with that, Abhishek. You know, I think that perception exists, especially when people say my product is too expensive. It's not a frivolous chewing gum, so I need to be safe. And I think today, especially Abhishek, the riskiest thing you can do is to play safe. I think we've all learned that. You know, and that is why some of the examples I played was, for example, in a very boring, in a very expensive product like a automobile. It's an 8-10 lakh, like $1 million worth product, right? It's up there with jewelry. Now, if you had to be very serious about it and say, you know, here is this very serious car, it's got this engine, it's got this horsepower, it's this fuel efficiency, man, that's fine. People buy a lot of cars because of the emotion associated, because of how it makes them feel. So, irrespective of the category, be it jewelry, be it life insurance, be it a bank, you better be innovating. Otherwise, you're dead anyway in the long run, boss. Yeah.
Any questions?
You tell me, Chief. I mean, there's a bunch of those, but
no, you can address 2-3 more. No problem.
Yeah, sure. Sunny has asked me, all jewelers don't have a budget to make a short film or an ad to tell a story. How do they do so with a relatively smaller budget and yet be effective? A very, very valid question, Sunny, which is why I mentioned that you don't need to do a Ranveer Singh Returns or a Mere Dad Ki Maruti. You don't need $1 million to tell a story every time. And a story need not always be video. A story could be just a photograph with a short write-up. A story could be an article or a blog post. But it's important you tell that story. That story could be done in the form of an interview. You know, like the example that I use of the taluka or a small shop in a small town. There are stories all around us, and the scale of an idea is not a function of its budget or its length or duration. Some of the most powerful, effective ideas have been really efficiently made, and they're very short, and they're delivered like this, instantly. You know, so that's how really I would recommend you find that. I'm not going to try and give you examples for this because I don't know your product or your particular marketing objective. What else? Which one is that, Jayant, Hiren Bhai, you asked me? Okay, I've answered that. The storytelling website that I mentioned, Manpriya, was something called the Future of Storytelling. I'll try and share a link of that particular science experiment of testing stories. I'll try and sell that. Yeah. Manisha, I think I've already answered that single showroom jewelers example. Kajal, yes, that's an interesting question. Now, how do we pick a topic for empathetic marketing when we are just looking at contribution at our brand image? and not conversion. I think, Kajal, it's really important, for that purpose or that empathy to come out of something that's very core to the brand. If it is disconnected, it will not necessarily help add back to the brand. And I'll give you an example of that. I'll give you an example of something I did for Kings, the soups and noodles guys. Since they're a packaged food brand, their entire CSR is about hunger. So they've taken up the entire midday meals that they run in schools. Similarly with, maybe a cosmetics brand, if you're able to take up, say for example, acid attack victims, because here is a brand talking about beauty, and here is the same brand talking about acid attack victims or survivors in the same breath, that just comes back really interestingly. Or what, for example, the likes of a Coca-Cola do, to help kind of protect the brand in terms of water conversion, conservation, and regeneration, etc. Right? So I think find something that's very core to your brand or your product or your demographic. It will come out of those 2 or 3 things. That what is the audience I'm talking to? Am I talking to kids? Let's pick up something that's relevant to them, for example, nutrition or education or whatever. Am I talking to women? Let's talk about something which is equality, empowerment, careers, second careers, relationships, violence at home, things like that, right? So that's the way to potentially identify through the core of the product and your target audience, and then link it